Welcome everyone to the ADV Technical Institute channel. Today I wanted to present Agile, specifically the Scrum framework. Think of this presentation as your one-stop shop, whether you're studying for the PMP exam or just looking for a friendly introduction to Agile. We have designed it so you can follow along without any prior Agile background and still walk away with the depth you need on exam day, or just understand Agile. All right, let's get started. Here's our roadmap for today. We'll start with the fundamentals of Agile, then dive into Scrum, specifically its process, roles, ceremonies, and artifacts. We'll also cover how work is organized into stories, epics, and features, estimation techniques, key Agile metrics, and charts. All right, everyone, let's talk about what Agile actually is, because this trips up a lot of people. Agile is not a methodology, a tool, or a specific process you install. It's a mindset, a way of thinking about how teams build products. It was formally defined in 2001 by 17 software developers. The manifesto lays out 4 core values, and you can see them on the cards here. The idea is that while the things on the bottom still have value, the things on the top have more value. As you can see from the cards, the Agile Manifesto is a set of principles that encourages teams to work closely with customers, deliver value frequently, and adapt quickly to changing requirements. Its focus is on flexibility, teamwork, and continuous delivery of useful results. For the PMP exam, the key takeaway is that Agile is about being adaptive instead of predictive. Traditional project management assumes you can plan everything up front, while Agile assumes things will change and builds that flexibility right into how the team works. Keep that contrast in mind. It shows up in many exam questions. Scrum is one of the Agile frameworks. It's the most widely adopted. It's built on 3 pillars. Transparency means everyone sees the same information, no hidden work or secret statuses. Inspection means we regularly check our progress to spot problems early. Adaptation means that when we notice something is off, we adjust immediately rather than wait. These pillars support each other. You can't adapt without inspecting, and you can't inspect effectively without transparency. This is a sprint cycle, which is the heartbeat of Scrum. It starts with a product backlog, a living list of everything that product needs. In sprint planning, the team selects items they commit to for the next 1 to 4 weeks, based on the product owner's objective and goal. During the sprint, the team holds daily 15-minute stand-ups to stay aligned. At the end, the sprint review demo completed work to stakeholders for feedback, and the retrospective is a lesson learned initiative that helps the team improve future sprints. Then the cycle repeats. Each sprint should produce a potentially shippable increment, meaning it could be released to production if the business decides to do so. So here, this slide shows the work hierarchy in Scrum. We start with an epic, which is a large business objective or initiative. Think of them as major user-facing capabilities. For example, online checkout experience. The epic is then divided into features, which represent major capabilities that deliver value to users, like payment processing. Finally, features are broken down into user stories, which are small actionable requirements that can be completed during a sprint. They describe the requirements from a user perspective. We'll talk about that more in detail in the following slides. Think of it as moving from the big picture to the detailed work. Agile teams use hierarchies to ensure that every task completed in a sprint contributes to a larger business goal. Okay, on this slide, we're going to reiterate what we learned on the previous slide and just add themes in here as well. So Agile teams break work down from large business goals into smaller actionable pieces that can be delivered in a sprint. At the top is a theme, which represents that strategic business objective. For example, improve customer experience. Under the theme, we have epics, which are again are large initiatives that typically span across multiple sprints. An example would be streamline the online checkout process. Each epic is then broken down into features, which deliver specific business capabilities. For example, saved payment methods. Features are then broken down in user storage, which describe requirements from the user perspective. For example, as a shopper, I want to save my payment information so I can check out faster. Each user story includes acceptance criteria, which define how we know the story is complete and successful. Examples can include security requirements, performance expectations, or just business rules. Finally, the team creates tasks, which are specific activities required to complete the user story, such as building the database, developing the API, or testing the functionality. The key takeaway is that Agile work flows from theme, epic, feature, user story, task, moving from strategy to execution while maintaining alignment with business value. On this slide, we'll talk about Scrum roles. Scrum defines three accountabilities, not job titles, but responsibilities. The product owner is that single voice of customer and stakeholders. They own the product backlog and decide what gets built next based on the business value. The Scrum Master is a servant leader who coaches the team, facilitates events, and removes impediments. They're not a project manager. Then we have the development team. Is a self-organizing, cross-functional, meaning they have all the skills needed to deliver an increment without depending on outsiders. The ideal team size is 3 to 9 members, small enough for agility, large enough for capability. In addition to Scrum roles, we have various Scrum ceremonies. First one you'll see is sprint planning. That kicks off the sprint. During this event, the entire Scrum team participates. That includes the product owner, the Scrum Master, and the developers. The product owner presents that highest priority backlog items and helps define the sprint goal. The developers then determine how much work they can complete and create that sprint backlog, while the Scrum Master facilitates the session and ensures Scrum practices are followed. We have a daily Scrum meeting, sometimes called a daily stand-up. That's a 15-minute meeting that is facilitated by the Scrum Master, and 3 questions get answered by the developers. What did you do yesterday? What are you doing today? And are there any roadblocks? The Scrum Master ensures the event occurs and helps remove impediments, while the product owner may attend but is not required. At the end of the sprint, the team holds a sprint review. The developers demonstrate the completed work, the product owner discusses what was accomplished, and the current state of the product backlog, and the stakeholders provide feedback. The Scrum Master facilitates collaboration and ensures the event remains productive. The final event is a sprint retrospective, which is attended by the entire team, the, by the developers and the Scrum Master. The team reflects on what went well, what could be improved, and identifies actions to increase effectiveness in the next sprint. The Scrum Master typically facilitates this discussion and helps foster continuous improvement. The key stakeholder The key takeaway is that while all Scrum roles collaborate throughout the sprint, each event has specific purpose and highlights different responsibilities. Together, these events promote transparency, inspection, adaptation, and continuous improvement. All right, now we come to a knowledge check. Picture the scene. It's a daily stand-up. A developer says, "Hey, I'm blocked because I'm waiting on another team to finish something." The question is, whose job is it to clear that roadblock? Pick your answer first, then we'll walk through them together. All right, if you picked Scrum Master, you are correct. Now let's review the choices. Option 1, the product owner. Remember what I told you. The product owner owns the what. They manage the backlog, set priorities, and decide what the team should build next. They're not the person chasing down other teams to unblock work. So A is not our answer. Option C, development team. Yes, the developers can absolutely try to resolve technical issues themselves, but when a blocker involves another team or something outside their control, escalating it is not their primary responsibility. So C is not the best fit either. Option D, project manager. This one is a classic trap, especially for folks coming from a traditional project management background. In Scrum, there technically isn't a project manager role. Many of those responsibilities get distributed across the three Scrum roles. So D is out. That leaves option B, Scrum Master, as the correct answer. The Scrum Master is a servant leader whose sole job is to help the team succeed. That means coaching them on Scrum, facilitating ceremonies, shielding them from external distractions, and yes, removing impediments such as cross-team dependencies. If the team can't unblock something on their own, the Scrum Master steps in to clear the path. For the PMP exam tip, when you see the word impediment, block, or something shielding the team, that's almost always pointing to the Scrum Master. And remember, the Scrum Master is a servant leader, not a traditional manager. They support the team rather than direct them. All right, good job. Now let's move on. All right, now let's talk about some key Scrum concepts. There are several key Scrum concepts that are commonly referenced in Agile projects and frequently appear on the PMP exam. So let's start with the definition of ready. This defines the criteria a user story must meet before the team can pull it into a sprint. For example, the user story has to be clearly written, estimated, prioritized, and have acceptance criteria defined. The purpose of the definition of ready is to ensure that the team starts work with sufficient information to succeed. Next is the definition of done. This is a shared understanding of what it means to for work to be complete. A user story isn't done simply because coding is finished. It may also need to be tested, documented, reviewed, and meet all acceptance criteria. The definition of done helps maintain quality and consistency. The minimal viable product is the smallest version of a product that delivers enough value to customers to gather feedback and validate assumptions. Rather than building everything at once, these teams release a basic version, learn from users, and then improve it through future iterations. Closely related is that minimal business increment. While an MVP focuses on learning and validation, an MBI focuses on delivering a measurable business outcome. An MBI is the smallest amount of functionality that provides real value to the customers or stakeholders and can be released independently. Next is the team capacity. Capacity represents the amount of work a team can realistically complete during a sprint, given available time and resources. Factors such as vacations, holidays, training, or other availability all affect capacity. Finally, we have velocity. Velocity measures how many story points a team completes during a sprint. Teams use historical velocity to forecast future work and improve sprint planning. It's important to remember that velocity is a planning tool, not a performance metric for comparing teams. The key takeaway is that definition of ready helps determine when work is ready to start. Definition of done determines when work is complete. Minimal viable product helps validate ideas quickly. Minimal business increment delivers measurable business value. Capacity helps teams plan realistically. Velocity helps teams future work. For the exam, remember DOR is ready to start. Definition of done is done and releasable. MVP is learn from customers. MBI equals deliver business value. Capacity is available work hours. Points, velocity completed equals story points. Alright, now let's dive into the Scrum artifacts. Scrum defines 3 artifacts, and each artifact is paired with a commitment that helps keep the team focused on delivering value. The first artifact is a product backlog. That's a prioritized list of everything that might be needed for the product. Think of it as the team's single source of requirements. The product owner is responsible for creating, maintaining, and continuously refining that product backlog. Its commitment is the product goal, which describes the long-term objective that the product aims to achieve. The second artifact is that sprint backlog. During sprint planning, the developers select items from the product backlog and create a plan for completing them during that sprint. The sprint backlog represents the work the team intends to accomplish in that sprint. Its commitment is that sprint goal, which provides a shared purpose and direction for the team. The third artifact is an increment. The increment is a sum of all completed product backlog items that meet the team's definition of done. It represents the value of the usable product created during the sprint. Its commitment is the definition of done, which ensures quality and confirms that the work is complete and potentially releasable. The key takeaway is that each Scrum artifact has a commitment that answers a specific question. The product goal tells us where we're going, the sprint goal tells us what we're trying to achieve this sprint, and the definition of done tells us when the work is truly complete. Quick memory tip: product backlog equals product goal, sprint backlog equals sprint goal, increment equals definition of done. Goal, done is a simple way to remember the Scrum artifacts and their associated commitments for the PMP exam. Now we're going to talk about some reports and charts. So here we have the burn down and burn up charts. They're the 2 common Agile tracking tools and frequently tested on that PMP exam. Your burn down chart shows how much work remains in a sprint or project. The goal is for the remaining work to decrease over time until it reaches 0. If the actual progress line is above the ideal trend line, the team may be behind schedule. However, burn down charts can be misleading when scope changes, as they only show the remaining work. On the other hand, you have the burn up chart. That addresses this limitation by displaying 2 lines, one for the total scope and one for the completed work. If new work is added, the scope line increases, while the completed work line continues to rise. The gap between the 2 lines represents the remaining work. The key difference is that burn down charts track remaining work, while burn up charts track completed work and make scope changes visible. For the PMP exam, remember that burn up charts provide better visibility when requirements or scope change during a project. Your PMP tip: burn down equals remaining work, burn up equals completed work, plus scope changes. That's usually all students need to remember to answer the PMP exam questions correctly. Alright, now let's go ahead and do a quick knowledge check. The scenario is simple. A team agrees that a backlog item is only done when the code has been reviewed, tested, and documented. The question is, what do we call that shared checklist in Scrum? I'm going to pause for a second and I'll let you go ahead and answer that question, and we'll do a discussion. Alright, so if you picked option D, definition of done, you are correct. Now let's start reviewing each of these options. Option A, definition of ready. This one is the mirror image of what we're looking for. The definition of ready is a checklist that says a backlog item, which is a user story, is ready to be pulled into a sprint. Things like well understood, size, and has clear acceptance criteria. It's about the start of the work, not the finish, so A is not our answer. Now, sprint goal. The sprint goal is a single objective the team commits to for the sprint, kind of the why behind all the work, like enable users to save items for later. That's a goal, not a quality check, so B is out. Option C, acceptance criteria. This one is tempting because it does describe when work is acceptable, but acceptance criteria are specific to one user story item written by the product owner to describe what that particular story must do. They're not the team's shared, reusable checklist across all work, so C is not the best answer. That leaves us with option D, definition of done, and that's our correct answer. The definition of done is a team's shared agreement on what's done actually means. Code reviewed, tested, documented, and deployed to a specific environment, as agreed by the team and organization. It applies to every user story item and ensures each increment is potentially releasable. A PMP tip: keep these three straight. Definition of ready is about starting work. Acceptance criteria are specific to one story. Definition of done is a team-wide quality bar that applies to everything. If the question talks about a shared checklist for completing a work, that's the definition of done. I hope you guys realize the theme that I've been going through this whole presentation when we're reviewing questions. I want you to get into that PMI mindset, dissect a question, find out what they're really asking for, go through each choices and determine why it's correct or not correct. This will help you with understanding the topics, having that mental muscle, and preparing for the exam. Remember, it's not a memorization exam, but a PMI mindset exam. All right, let's move on to the next slide. Now we're going to talk about estimation techniques. When it comes to estimation techniques, Agile teams must constantly make decisions about what work should be done first and what features will deliver the most value. Two popular prioritization techniques are the Moscow method and the Kano model. The Moscow method helps teams prioritize requirements by characterizing them into four groups. Must-have requirements are critical, non-negotiable. They're needed for success. Should-have requirements are important but not essential for the current release. Could-have requirements are desirable enhancements that can be included if time and resources allow. Won't-have requirements are intentionally excluded from the current scope and may be considered in the future. So for example, if we're developing that mobile banking app, secure login would be a must-have. Mobile check deposit might be a should-have. Customizable themes could be a could-have. And cryptocurrency trading might be a won't-have for the current release. All right, now let's move along to the second estimation technique. The Kano model takes a different approach. By focusing on customer satisfaction, it helps teams understand which features will have the greatest impact on user experience. Basic needs are expected features. Customers may not notice them when they're present, but they will be dissatisfied if they're missing. For our banking app, secure account access will be a basic need. Performance features create satisfaction in proportion to how well they are delivered. The better the feature performs, the happier the customer. Faster transition processing is a good example. Excitement features are unexpected capabilities that delight customers and create a competitive advantage. For example, an AI-powered spending coach could surprise and impress users. The key difference is that Moscow helps prioritize work based on business necessity, while Kano helps prioritize features based on customer satisfaction, perceived value. Agile teams often use both techniques together to make informed product decisions. PMP exam tip: Moscow equals prioritize requirements, must have, should have, could have, won't have. Kano equals prioritize customer satisfaction, basic needs, performance features, excitement features. Moscow asks, how important is this feature? Kano asks, how will customers feel about this feature? Estimation techniques continued. Let's take a moment to talk about paired comparison. Paired comparison method helps teams rank items by comparing them two at a time instead of trying to prioritize a long list at once. Each item is compared against every other item, and stakeholders decide which is more important. The item that wins the most comparisons receives the highest priority. For example, if a team is deciding between improving security, enhancing performance, or adding a new feature, they would compare security versus performance, security versus a new feature, and performance versus a new feature. The results are then tallied to determine the final ranking. When it comes to the 100-point method, it's a collaborative voting technique. Each stakeholder receives 100 points and distributes them across features, requirements, or backlog items based on perceived value. Once all votes are collected, the points are totaled to determine the priorities. For example, if stakeholders believe security is the most important feature, they might allocate 50 points to security, 30 points to performance, and 20 points to reporting features. Combining everyone's votes reveal the group's overall priorities. The key difference is that the paired comparison method uses direct comparisons to rank options, while the 100-point method uses stakeholder voting to measure perceived value and importance. Both techniques help Agile teams make objective prioritization decisions and reduce bias. A PMP exam tip: paired comparison, compare items two at a time. It's best when priorities are unclear, produces a ranked list. 100-point method, stakeholders distribute 100 points, best for gathering, group input, reveals perceived value and priorities. Now let's move on. Now we're going to talk about some agile estimation techniques. So unlike traditional project management, agile teams focus on relative estimation rather than estimating work in hours or days. The goal is to compare the size, complexity, effort, and uncertainty of work items so teams can plan more effectively. The first technique that we'll talk about is planning poker. That is a consensus-based estimation method. Team members, team members independently select cards, typically using a Fibonacci sequence, such as 1, 2, 3, 5, 8, 13, to determine a user story, to estimate a user story. Everyone reveals their estimates at the same time, discusses any differences, and repeats the process until a consensus is reached. This helps prevent bias and encourages team collaboration. The second technique, story points, which measures the relative effort required to complete a user story. Story points consider factors such as complexity, amount of work, and risk. Rather than asking how many hours a task will take, the team compares it to the other work items. For example, if one story is twice as difficult as another, it may receive twice as many story points. The third technique is the t-shirt sizing, which uses categories such as extra small, small, medium, large, and extra large to estimate work at a high level. This approach is useful during backlog refinement, a roadmap planning, or when detailed information is not yet available. The key difference is that planning poker is a collaborative estimation technique, story points are the unit of measurement, and t-shirt sizing provides a quick, high-level estimate when precision is not required. For the exam tip, planning poker, how the team estimates, story points, what the team estimates with, t-shirt sizing, quick high-level sizing is done. You usually start off with t-shirt sizing, then you add into your story points or your planning poker. All right, another knowledge check question. The question states that during sprint planning, each team member independently selects a numbered card to estimate a user story. After everyone reveals their cards, the estimates range from 3 to 13. I'm going to give you a minute to answer this question and then we'll talk about it. All right, so if you picked planning poker, you are correct. Now let's do a deep dive on this question and see what we're talking about. The key clue here is that the use of numbered cards selected independently and revealed simultaneously. This is defining the characteristics of planning poker, right? In planning poker, team members use cards with values that typically follow a Fibonacci sequence, such as 1, 2, 3, 5, 8, and 13. Everyone selects a card privately and reveals it at the same time. This approach prevents anchoring bias, where team members might be influenced by someone else's estimate before making their own. When estimates vary significantly, such as one person selecting the 3 and another selecting the 13, the team discusses their reasoning. Their conversation often uncovers assumptions, risks, or complexities that some team members may have overlooked. After the discussion, the team estimates again until consensus is reached. All right, so now let's quickly look at the other options. Wideband Delphi also seeks expert consensus, but it does not typically use a numbered card revealed. Simultaneously, affinity estimation that groups similar items based on relative size or effort and is often used to estimate large backlogs. Then t-shirt sizing that uses categories like small, medium, large, and extra large rather than numbered cards. So therefore, our correct answer was planning poker. For the PMP exam, I want you to remember, whenever you see team members selecting numbered cards, revealing them simultaneously and discussing differences, that's planning poker. Again, remember how we are dissecting these questions, going over each option, understanding that as a big picture and picking the right answer. This is how I want you to prepare for the exam. It's a scenario-based exam, not a memorization exam. You need to get into that PMI mindset. All right, so let's talk about some Agile metrics. So Agile teams use metrics to understand performance, improve productivity, and identify opportunities for continuous improvement. The goal is not to measure individual productivity, but to improve how work flows through the system. So we're going to start with velocity. Remember, velocity measures the average number of story points a team completes during a sprint. The teams use velocity to forecast future work and improve sprint planning. It's important to remember that velocity should not be used to compare teams because team estimates differently. So, for example, Jack's team cannot compare themselves with John's team. Each one works separately, differently. Next is your lead time. Your lead time measures the total time from when a request is made until the value is delivered to the customer. It reflects the customer's perspective and helps organizations understand how quickly they can respond to business needs. Then we have cycle time that measures the time from when work actually begins until it's completed. Unlike lead time, cycle time focuses only on active work. A shorter cycle time generally indicates a more efficient delivery process. A simple way to remember that the difference is that lead time includes waiting plus working, while cycle time measures only working time. Another important metric is throughput, which measures how many work items are completed during a specific period, while velocity measures story points. Throughput measures completed items such as user stories, features, or tasks. Work in progress represents the amount of work currently being worked on. Agile teams often limit work in progress to prevent multitasking, reduce bottleneck, and improve flow. Less work in progress often means faster delivery and better focus. Finally, we have escaped defects. These are defects that were not found during development or tested and instead were discovered after release. A high number of escaped defects may indicate gaps in quality assurance, testing, or definition of done. The key takeaway here is that Agile metrics help teams improve delivery and quality. Velocity and throughput measure output, lead time and cycle time measure speed, work in progress measure flow efficiencies, and escaped defects measure quality. All right. To add to that, I would like you to go over the Crumbs flow diagram, and that can be intimidating for students if you get too technical. I'm going to focus on what it tells a project manager rather than how to read every detail of the chart. Agile teams rely on visual tools to make work transparent and identify issues early. So the cumulative flow diagram and information radiators. The cumulative flow diagram is a visual tool that's used to monitor workflow over time. Each colored band represents a stage in the workflow, such as backlog and progress, testing, or done. The primary purpose of a cumulative flow diagram is to help teams identify bottlenecks and monitor flow. If a band begins to widen significantly, it may indicate that work is accumulating at the stage, creating a bottleneck. For example, if the testing band continues to grow, the team may not have enough testing capacity to keep up with development. When the bands remain relatively stable and parallel, it generally indicates a healthy and predictable workflow. So Agile teams use the cumulative flow diagram to monitor work in progress, improve flow efficiency, and identify process issues before they become major problems. The second concept is information radiators. These are highly visible displays of project information that allows anyone to quickly understand the current state, the current status of the work. Information radiators support Agile core value of transparency. Common examples include the Kanban board, task boards, the burn up charts, a dashboard displaying metrics such as velocity, work in progress, and sprint progress. The key idea is that those information should be visible and accessible to the entire team and stakeholders without requiring special reports or meetings. So it needs to be in a visible, high traffic area where everybody can see it. So the main takeaway here is that cumulative flow diagrams help teams understand workflow and identify bottlenecks, while information radiators make project information visible and promote transparency. Okay. Before I end this presentation, I did want to touch base on hybrid. Not every organization is ready for that fully agile approach, and not every project can be managed using a traditional predictive methodology. This is where hybrid approaches come in. A hybrid approach combines elements of both predictive and agile project management. Typically, high-level planning, such as your scope, your budget, your governance, and major milestones, is managed using predictive practices, while teams execute and deliver work using agile methods such as sprints, backlogs, and iterative delivery. So there are several common hybrid patterns. One approach uses a traditional waterfall structure for project phases, while agile teams perform the work within each phase. Another uses predictive governance and reporting, while agile delivery teams work iteratively. Some organizations operate with fixed scope and budget requirements, but allow flexibility in how work is delivered through sprint cycles. Others use rolling wave planning, where near-term work is planned in detail, while future work remains at a high level until more information becomes available. Hybrid approaches are particularly valuable when organizations face regulatory, contractual, or organizational constraints that make a fully agile implementation difficult. Uh, so for a PMP exam tip, choose hybrid when governance and compliance are required, the scope or budget is fixed, organization is transitioning to agile, and predictive teams must work together. That brings us to the end of our presentation. Thank you for joining me today. If this lesson helps you better understand Agile and hybrid project management, please like this video, subscribe to our channel, and turn on notifications so you don't miss future PMP training content. Until next time, keep learning, keep growing, and keep leading successful projects. Take care and I'll see you.